All right, so I'm James Kukoska. I'm the CTO at NetAlly. As mentioned, first time at Security Field Day. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got here, why we're here, what a field analyzer is, at least in our eyes, what a site assessment is, cyber site assessment is, and then a lot of demos. And if I get on a roll, just jump in and interrupt me. I'll apologize. So NetAlly may not be a recognizable name in the security space. In fact, it isn't. But just to give you a little bit of history, we were FLUKE networks for 20 years, right? So from 1995 to 2015, and some of you may have used different products along the way. We had sort of a history of innovation up to the OptiView and such. And then, of course, to celebrate our 20th anniversary, we got sold off. So the company that owned it, or the parent company, Danaher, took all these comm folks and sold them off to a company you probably do know, which is NetScout, right? So you come in one day and it's the visceral gut punch of the press announcement is one thing, but seeing them razor scraping the signage off your office is another. So at NetScout, of course, then we put the campaigns. Hey, we're the same guys with just a different color, right? And so we chugged along, and about the time we got everything rebranded and converted to green from yellow, NetScout decided that we were too much of an outlier for their business, right? They, as you know, they do a lot of rack-mounted stuff, and here we were, these little hand goobers, and it didn't match anything about how they manufacture, sell, go to market, or anything. So we got sold off, and that's how we became NetAlly. So we when we became NetAlly, this is in that 2018, late 2018, we actually used Field Day as our main coming out, right? It lined up well, and so I've actually done every field day, mobility field day since then. This first one in particular was interesting, right? Because we were just trying to establish some credibility. I felt I was the CTO at that point, and reluctant CTO, as I often called myself, but I felt like I had to build some street cred. So the good news is, so I've been, and I hearing some of the banter before this, you could just hear the amount of experience here. In fact, even though we're at Security Field Day, as I looked through the bios, right, it was just great to see. The reality is almost everybody came out of networking or NetOps or something along those lines, right? And even Bruno, right, guy who puts in his bio that he loves packets, So I love that. So, but and like most of you, I've been around for a while, right? I actually started as a kid, throwing my paper out to make running for Radio Shack. I remember buying my first oscilloscope, which really gave me visibility. And it's kind of ironic now that visibility is one of our three main tenets at NetAlly. Kind of rode through as things went from analog, like some of you also, right, did work, built illegal linear amplifiers for CB with tubes, and then things went to solid state, then things went to digital and multiple domains. I was fortunate that in Colorado Springs, Hewlett Packard was here. This is and we did analog scopes when I started there in '79. But of course, it was digital. Test and measurement went digital. We started doing automated measurements, and just so many things have come full circle, right? We now have spectrum analysis. We were doing our first Fourier transforms at the time, but now we have spectral analysis actually built in the CyberScope. And so was fortunate enough. Visibility has always been key to me, and hopefully you'll see that in our displays and the way we do things, right? And so was fortunate enough to grace the cover of the HP Journal. A couple times switched over to logic analysis, lots of buses, lots of data, and created kind of a visualization system for multi-bus stuff. Again, got to grace the cover of the HP Journal. They seemed to like the stuff I was coming up with on screens, and so but we added an Ethernet port to our logic analyzers, right? Because we had a lot of data, and that's how I got into networking. So moved over to a startup called Forte. I heard some talk, earlier about Nobel and and getting to 100 megabits. So I actually this is out of my lab notebook. This is the first handheld 10100 tester. Became known as One Touch. Very much loved in the industry. And so, anyway, so time goes on. We're NetAlly. We presented at Field Day 6, Mobility Field Day, and this is a lot about. We were really starting to find our way of using the tool as the collector, and the handheld as the collector, and the cloud as the kind of the analysis platform. Really working hard on unencumbered collaboration and being able to share information and just a lot of visibility. Field Day 7 came along. We started to add topology mapping, and you'll see how all this sort of plays out in security here in a bit. Last year, of course, we were just swamped out by the opening of the 6 gig band for Wi-Fi 6E, and so and rolling the product line for that and introducing the new AirCheck and all of our new decoder rings for all the complexity that was introduced. So here we are, 2023, and this year for the first time we're splitting the field, right? Because we're crossing over a bit into security, and of course it's a daunting space, right? Because there's just so many players and segmentations, and in particular, here we are with this handheld. So I think that the good news is we're unique in this space, right? And the bad news is we're unique in this space, right? So we don't fit cleanly in any of these buckets, and so we don't get to share in the Gartner analysis of how different people perform in the Magic Quadrant or things like that. But so really my mission here today is to kind of show you what we're doing with the CyberScope and why we think it's relative and to cybersecurity. So now that said, it isn't that much of a stretch, right? I've been in places where we tried to contort ourselves into whatever the cool thing was. Or, a couple of years ago, it was work from home. Why don't you have what's your work from home story? Well, people don't deploy, $2,000 testers or more, in every house, right? And so that's more about agents. But this has sort of come to us a little more naturally, and we've just sort of seen as cyber has risen up that more and more of our customers were using our products for cybersecurity. So I get on a call, and it would be a tactical counter surveillance guy who was in LA, right? He did the Kardashians, right? And they would do sweeps, and he was using an AirCheck, right? Or we talked to a large vendor that was using it for understanding the range of Wi-Fi outside of their building. Can you sit in the car in the parking lot and still connect, right? And things like that. So we really started to sort of take a look at all the features we had and look at them instead of through an IT ops lens, look at them through a SecOps lens. And it's amazing how much of it and how much of our applications, made sense for SecOps, right? Capture spectrum, and all that. And so, we'd been running into it all along. I can remember, we automatically discover SNMP devices as we do our discovery on the network. And I can remember being in a major airport and suddenly having access to the wireless LAN controller, because we discovered it, we probed it, we got the information out of it, and they had left the community strings as a default, right? And that's certainly one issue with security, is just out of box defaults and things not getting changed, or maybe something gets factory reset and goes back to its original state. But and features that we've added along the way. So, for example, when we do our DHCP request, we look at how many offers we get back, and we identify a second offer. Well, we did that back in 2015 because that was, as sort of the consumerization of IT, right? Go to Best Buy, get something, and some, employee brings in a device and plugs it into the network and doesn't realizing it's serving out DHCP addresses, and suddenly in your, 10 250 space, you're getting these 192s. But you start to think about in security, boy, if you could plug a DHCP server in, or somehow hijack that, you're basically, every client that comes on gets an address. You're telling it, hey, here's your router for any off-net traffic, and here's your DNS servers. I mean, you pretty much got control of everything that thing does. And so a lot of the features we did, that we had really had a lot of application, and we just really spent some time, to develop the CyberScope in race tuning them. So we had these broad shoulders of 20 years of features, but once we really started to focus on the cyberspace, that we did a bunch of refinements and a big addition in adding Nmap, integrating Nmap cleanly into the product. And I'm going to talk about what that means. The other good news, that makes it easier for us to cross over is that it's the same pain points, right? Whether you're in IT ops or SecOps, you can't find talent. You can't keep up with manual processes. Networks are just so heterogeneous, right? In fact, just the banter before, right? Hearing that, oh, we still got these old legacy things we're supporting. And I've had those same conversations with customers. Why are you running web with 802.11b? Well, we've got 10,000 scanner guns, or whatever that we need to do, right? So I think it's interesting in IT, not just managing the legacy and keeping that alive and running, but then at the same time you got Wi-Fi 6E and things like that coming along that you need to do. And visibility has always been a problem. Time spent generating reports, right? We spend a lot of work on our reporting and just the sheer number of tools, right? And so with that, we're kind of launching ourselves as the world's first handheld cyber security analyzer, and really it's about site assessments, right? Site cybersecurity assessments, and validating segmentation, provisioning, and discovering everything that's out there, wired or Wi-Fi. And I'll show you all this. I'll demo all this. Wireless security. I mean, more and more devices have moved to wireless, right? It used to be if you wanted a new digital signage or a new printer showed up or whatever, I gotta have an RJ there, right? And well, now we just connect it to the Wi-Fi. So more and more assets have moved to Wi-Fi, and that's kind of ground zero for us. And then lastly, vulnerability assessments. So what's a site? Let's start there, right? So traditional sites, right? Be it education or typical cubicle offices. Here's retail. I think that's a Target. Here's a Denver International Airport. So there's kind of the traditional sites, right? And if they're huge, of course, you can have large iron and monitor every packet and all that. And we have a good fit here. But you really have to kind of think about sites as being more distributed, right? And so as Ethernet has just worked its way into everything, factories and in particular, a lot of our customers run with branches, right? Most of the people I talk to manage between 5 and 50 sites, let's say. That if you're in education, it's all the schools. If you're in retail, it's all the stores. If you're in healthcare, it's all the doctor's offices you just added to your group, right? So maybe this is even a site. I've been trying to, as I come up to speed in the security space, I've been trying to watch a lot of the RSA webinars and presentations, right? And so this one just sort of struck me, right? Because this is a site, right? An EV charging station is a site, and really it's all this distributed stuff, right? Whether you're in transportation or utilities, it could be a substation, you name it, right? These are all sites, and really the more distributed they are, the more they call for a handheld portable tool that can go in and quickly assess the situation. So So as a handheld, right, we have a variety of different ways we can be deployed. And I'll talk about these and demo these. Physical site assessment, right? Just to be able to come in and connect to all the different SSIDs or all the different VLANs and validate reachability and non-reachability. Because a lot of times, it's interesting for us. It's always been about connectivity. When I get on this VLAN, when I plug into this port, when I'm on this SSID, can I reach this, right? Can the guest network get to the HR? Can the guest or can the HR people or the production network can it get to these servers, right? But not from the guest network. And so really, as we've gotten into security, it's just sort of a matter of validating that you can't get places, right? But it's the same connectivity testing. It's the same, pull this web page, see if you can get to this URL. Can you ping or TCP connect to this particular IP address? And that all comes into provisioning validation. RJ vulnerability has been interesting for me because I tell you, I go into a lot of sites and just like default passwords. Another thing you see, it feels like new projects fire up in IT and all the heat and light is on the newness, right? But I see a lot of times that the old stuff isn't de-deployed. One of my favorites is I go into my car dealership and they've got the little, guest office waiting area and there's an RJ plug in production network. And you just see that a lot where there's a lot of things have moved to Wi-Fi. There's a lot of open RJs that are out there. And if they're running PoE, even more damning, right? Because now you can plug something in with perpetual power. So here we're largely about client emulation. Wi-Fi site assessment. This is, there's always been, and again, I'll demo this. This is, air mapper surveys, right? This is the traditional Wi-Fi survey that was done for an AP installer, a system integrator, to prove that they had coverage as they put the APs in. Well, we sort of looked at it through a different lens. And we're like, holy cow, this means you can, if you didn't use it that way, but you just kind of took 10 minutes to walk the perimeter of your building, we can understand all the APs, where they're located. And in fact, to that, we've added Bluetooth. So while you're doing that same survey, we'll gather all the Bluetooth devices and you'll know where they're located. And then for CyberScope, we added clients. So now you can, in that same single walk, we're understanding where all the clients are. And then lastly, we've added API integration, which lets you take basically things that would normally be on the knock screen and gracefully integrate them into the handheld for additional color commentary. And then lastly, we've got this drop-in model, right? You can put this thing. It comes in a little hard case. Here I should physically. So here it is. I don't know if you can see that how well, but basically. Extra storage, USB-C, two wired ports, 10 gig, up to 10 gig copper fiber, SFP, directional antenna, USB camera built in the back, and all in this little nice, rugged handheld, right? So that's that. But you can drop it into a site and literally have an admin just connect it to even the guest network and using our Link Live cloud service come in and remote into it. Of course, we support, if you're on, within the same network and you don't want to go through the cloud service, we support VNC and things like that for remote. But it really gives you a lot of ability because a lot of times the expert's not where the problem is, or in this, sort of branch deployment distributed, IT world that we live in, that it's nice to be able to just, drop something in and have somebody connect to the network and have complete visibility of what's going on that site without having to physically go there. So, and then of course, everything we do gets pushed to Link Live, and I'll show you this too. So kind of the way to think about us relative to the rest of the security spaces, they tend to be a little more fixed, right? Whether it's something looking at every packet coming in and out of the organization, or it's agents installed on devices or things like that. And we're really more about being portable at the point of presence. And there's a lot of cool stuff that happens there, right? When you're operating at a higher level and you're looking at everything, it just, you get false alarms. There's just a lot of data. And so there's just something about being right where the action is. And of course, allowing you to immediately identify where things are, what they are, potentially even unplug them. So that's that. Of course, you all know this access complexity has grown dramatically from networks being used for just your computers to phones, added VoIP and VLANs and then APs came along, and then we had the BYOD movement, and then and what's been interesting is to see all these overlay networks. It used to be separate things, right? This used to be little RJ11 jacks, right, and a separate cable plant, and this used to be coax, right, and now even to the point where you can power your trophers, right, your with LED lighting, over PoE, because you can get 90 watts out of port, right, and so all these things have sort of collapsed onto our network, and of course have added a lot of complexity there. And sites are complex because you've got segmentation and you're trying to keep, separate VLANs and separate SSIDs. And a lot of times each SSID feeds into its own VLAN. And so you got kind of all the different networks, and connection means mashing up against all the different, functions that you're trying to provide in terms of services and the variety of operating systems. And then you add in, headless devices and IoT, and then managing the legacy at the same time you're being asked to do, major upgrades to newer stuff. So there's a lot. And so, and segmentation is key, right? For me, again, it's been super interesting as we kind of pivot into security, because I've had lots of aha moments, and one of the things we had that makes CyberScope unique is we break the layer 2 ceiling. So since we have multiple Wi-Fi radios, rather than just show, like in most Wi-Fi tools will just show you a MAC because they can just see the packet flying in the air. So we have, of course, that promiscuous radio, but at the same time, untethered, we can be connected to an SSID and discovering it. And so we can typically take a MAC and understand its IP address. Once we have an IP address, we can start to look at ports and services and do a better job of telling you that, what this thing actually is, and start pulling out names for it and things like that. And speaking to segmentation, I guess I've just been fascinated at the number of places I've been in public where I'll take out my CyberScope, and I can just, I'm on a plane, and I connect to the Wi-Fi, and I've literally got layer 3 access to everybody's device there, and there they are, or I'm at the I think this is Lifetime Fitness actually, same thing, because there's no client isolation, and so another sort of segmentation, sort of validation, a place we really come to play, understanding that wow, you can really see these things, you can reach these things, probably shouldn't have that. So a big part of CyberScope was domesticating Nmap, right? It's kind of, the most popular tool out there, I think, kind of for cybersecurity. We took a half step back, and it's awesome, right? And it's amazing how much it does. There's 140 libraries you can build on. And there's 600 and some odd scripts. If you go to GitHub, there's tons more scripts. Log4j vulnerability comes out. There's a Log4j script for Nmap. So it's great. However, it's kind of a nerd box, right? And so when you look at it and trying to use it, you've got all these just nasty flags and command line options and scripts and script dogs, and it just goes on and on. It's often confusing what needs to be run as super user or not. And so we wanted to really rein that in. I'll show you all this, and then you just get these reams of output, right? And so, well, how do you interpret that? And so we put a grading layer on top of it, where you can say, hey, when you're looking at this output, you must not contain this. I don't want any universal plug and play 1.0 on my network, right? And so as we're discovering the network, if we see that, I want to treat it as an error, and we really run it on the unit, right? So you'll see it in the details, but it also makes us color that node red, and then also within the list that makes us pop as something to be looked at, and all the way over to link live, where you can get back to the same screen. And again, I'll show that. And another thing that makes Nmap very difficult to use is the fingerprints. You're kind of looking at the output, and then there's these blobs of encrypted text because they want you to, as a community, they want submissions that tell us that this is a Roku, or whatever, because it has this particular signature on the network. So we licensed Nmap, no cheap date, by the way. You may think of it as a free tool, but if it's used commercially, you have to license it, and so but as such, we were able to add the ability to remove fingerprints, right, to get them out of the way. In fact, by default, we don't do the fingerprints. And then lastly, the contexts that we use Nmap in. So there's certainly the sandboxing that happens around the command line, but we also wanted to let you use it in auto test. And again, I will show this, right? This is where you're saying, hey, connect to this network, do these things, and be able to leverage Nmap there also. But then also in our discovery, as we see devices, applying Nmap to every device. And then last but not least, if you're looking at any particular device, you can drill down further and do additional Nmap investigations. So I'm going to flip over here to the demo here in a second. So to us, a site security assessment is that you validate all the network access, provisioning, segmentation, particularly focusing on RJ45s, anything that's accessible maybe should be turned off. We should discover all the assets, wired and Wi-Fi, be able to tell you exactly where they're located from not only a network standpoint, but also from a physical standpoint. We got to let you tag and name and classify anything of interest. Have that pushed up to link live for posterity, further analysis. Do any additional endpoint profiling you want. Do a quick and dirty survey, and then just have this ability to know where everything Wi-Fi is in your organization, including Wi-Fi 6E, because we do have 6E, and knowing BLE devices and discovery and all that, and then allowing you to do topology and even look at differences in your topology over time. So
the one thing that occurred to me as you're going through all these rapid fire applications is, what are you doing to make sure this is non-intrusive and disruptive? And what are you doing with the data you collect here that is potentially having privacy type issues, particularly in organizations where we're doing this on guest network things that are otherwise semi-public spaces?
Yeah. In terms of data, let me start there. We have Link Live. It's our service. We're using NetSpark Run, which we believe is the best vulnerability scanner. It's been vetted by a fair number of organizations, and we feel pretty good about the security there. We of course we've beefed it up over time with two-way authentication and things like that. But and there's a lot of ability to control organizationally who can see what and what data is there and what controls they have in Link Live. However, we recognize and have a lot of customers that cannot use public cloud services. So we also offer Link Live as a containerized version, so you can deploy it privately. But lastly, what I'd say is actually, even if you didn't use Link Live, there's so much power in the product. And in fact, one of the things for us has always been kind of balancing, right? We're still a handheld, and we want you to be on site to have total effectiveness there and to be able to do everything. But at the same time, you're not going to do major topology mapping and Wi-Fi heat mapping and things like that on the smaller screen. You can, but it's just not effective, right? So, but the unit is very usable on its own. In terms of intrusiveness, we've sort of dealt with that all along. And so, one of the things in our discovery settings is that you can control the rate of us discovering the network. And in fact, it turns out like a Cisco IDS, if you get over about 22 ARPs per second, it'll shut down the port, right? And so you can dial it back. And then, of course, within Nmap, you've got a lot of ability to control the scanning methods and the aggressiveness of the discovery. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, because obviously when you're doing live network testing, the first rule is do no harm. So I just want to make sure that what we do want to learn things, but at the same time we don't want to get in the way of transactions that are going on or do something that could be disruptive in any way.
Yeah. I mean, we've plugged in. We plugged in. Since we're standing on the shoulders of Etherscope, right? We have literally and sort of added the security layer on top of it. We've plugged into just into the White House, into major, just everything you imagine. Hospitals, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, on and on and on. And so. And one time, I think back in 2012, we did have one issue when we tried to assume an IP address in a setting where there was no DHCP, and that got us in some trouble. And in fact, we removed that feature since then. Lots of history there, but great question.